While the rest of America argues over grocery bills and inflation, the Amish have been quietly doing something that most people would never believe. They take a simple plastic bucket, a handful of straw, and about $3.30 worth of mushroom spawn, and within a few weeks they are harvesting enough protein-rich food to feed an entire family of 6. No electricity, no fancy equipment, no subscription to anything. Just a bucket, some hot water, and an organism so powerful it can break down wood, filter toxins from soil, and according to researchers, deliver more protein per square foot than almost any backyard crop you can name. The mushroom they grow is the oyster mushroom, Pleurotus austriatus, and if you have never heard of it being used as a full meat replacement, that is not an accident. Because this fungus does something that makes the industrial food system very uncomfortable. It grows fast, it grows cheap, and it grows without any of the inputs that keep billion-dollar corporations in business. No fertilizer contracts, no seed patents, no cold chain logistics, just biology doing what biology has done for 300 million years. And here is what makes this even more interesting. The method I am about to walk you through is so simple that if you can boil water and stack layers in a container, you already have every skill you need. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to set up your first bucket, how to pasteurize your substrate without any special equipment, how to inoculate it for maximum yield, and how to keep harvesting from the same bucket again and again. Potentially turning one batch of spawn into an endless supply. If you find this kind of knowledge valuable, the kind they definitely do not teach in school, hit that subscribe button right now because we dig into forgotten food systems every single week on this channel. Let us start with why the Amish chose this particular mushroom, because it was not random. Oyster mushrooms are what mycologists call aggressive colonizers. That means once you introduce their mycelium, the root-like network of the fungus, into a suitable material, they take over fast. We are talking full colonization in as little as 2 weeks. Compare that to a tomato plant that needs months of care, sunlight, consistent watering, and fertile soil. The oyster mushroom does not care about any of that. It will grow in a dark corner of your basement. It will grow in a closet. It will grow on your kitchen counter next to the coffee maker. And it will double in size every single day once it starts fruiting. But here is what really sets it apart as a food source. Oyster mushrooms contain significant amounts of protein, fiber, and B vitamins. Research suggests they deliver meaningful levels of niacin, riboflavin, and pantothenic acid. They contain compounds called beta-glucans that studies have linked to immune system support, and their texture, when cooked properly, is so remarkably close to pulled pork or shredded chicken that entire restaurants have built menus around them. The Amish figured this out generations ago. The rest of us are just catching up. So let us build this system from scratch. And I mean scratch. Total cost, if you are smart about sourcing, is somewhere between $3 and $5 per bucket, and each bucket can produce multiple harvests. First, the container. You want a 1-gallon or 5-liter plastic bucket with a lid. These are available at almost any hardware store for very little money, but here is the real move. Go to any local restaurant and ask if they have empty food-grade buckets, pickle buckets, sauce buckets, olive buckets. Most places throw these away or recycle them and will happily hand you a stack for free. The Amish have been doing this for years. Why buy what someone else is discarding? Once you have your bucket, you need to drill holes. About a dozen holes spread evenly around the sides, each roughly a 1/4 inch in diameter. These are your fruiting ports, the spots where mushrooms will eventually push through and grow outward in beautiful clusters. Drill a few holes in the bottom as well for drainage, because standing water at the base creates conditions you do not want. Anaerobic bacteria, foul smells, failed grows. After drilling, clean up any rough plastic edges with a quick sand so nothing snags or harbors contaminants. Now, if you want to scale up, you can use a 5-gallon or 25-liter bucket instead. For that size, aim for about 20 holes, spaced roughly 6 inches apart in up to 4 rows. Same principle, just bigger. The beauty of using buckets instead of the disposable mushroom grow bags you see sold online is that buckets are reusable indefinitely. One bucket can produce batch after batch for years. That is the kind of economics the Amish understand instinctively. Do not buy disposable when durable costs the same. Next, your substrate. This is what the mushrooms actually grow on, their food source, and the cheapest option that works beautifully is plain straw. You can buy a bag of chopped straw from a pet store for a couple of dollars. The key word there is chopped. You want pieces that are a few inches long, not full-length stalks, because shorter pieces allow the mycelium to colonize faster. If you are using straw from a bale, you will need to cut it down to size first. A pair of garden shears over a garbage can works fine. Now comes the step that separates successful growers from frustrated ones. Pasteurization. This is not sterilization, and that distinction matters enormously. You are going to submerge your straw in hot water, not boiling water, at a temperature between 140 and 175 degrees Fahrenheit. That is 60 to 80 degrees Celsius. Hold it there for about 1 hour. Why not just boil it? This is the counterintuitive part. If you sterilize straw by boiling it and killing every single microorganism, you actually leave it more vulnerable to contamination. A completely sterile substrate is a blank canvas, and whatever lands on it first wins. But pasteurized straw still contains beneficial microorganisms that work alongside your mushroom mycelium and help defend against unwanted mold and bacteria. It is a controlled ecosystem, not a scorched earth. The technique is simple. Put your straw in a mesh sack, a laundry bag, or even an old pillowcase. Fill a large container with the hottest water from your tap, then top it off with boiling water from a kettle until you hit that target temperature range. Submerge the straw completely. Weigh it down so it stays underwater and leave it for 1 hour. Then pull it out and let it drain for about 30 minutes until it is cool to the touch and no longer dripping when squeezed. It will be about 3 times heavier than when it went in. That retained moisture is exactly what your mushrooms want. Now here is where everything comes together. Inoculation. But before you touch anything, you need to sanitize every surface that will contact your spawn. The Amish are meticulous about this step, and so should you be. Wipe down your bucket inside and out, the lid, your work surface, and even the outside of the spawn bag with isopropyl alcohol or a simple sterilizing solution, your hands too. Contamination at this stage means starting over, so take the extra 5 minutes. Your spawn is grain spawn, which looks like colonized rice or wheat kernels covered in white mycelium. It crumbles apart easily and distributes evenly. You are going to build your bucket in layers. A handful of pasteurized straw pressed down firmly, then a sprinkling of crumbled grain spawn, then more straw, then more spawn, repeating until you reach the top. Aim for roughly 5 to 10% spawn by volume relative to the straw. You can get away with less, but higher spawn rates mean faster colonization and less chance of competing fungi getting a foothold. Once your bucket is full, put the lid on. And now the surgical tape. Cover each of your drilled holes with a small piece of micropore surgical tape. This does 2 critical things. It blocks contaminant spores from blowing in through the holes while still allowing air exchange because the tape is breathable. And it helps maintain the moisture level inside the bucket by reducing evaporation. Mushrooms need humidity the way we need oxygen. Without it, nothing happens. Set your bucket somewhere at room temperature, away from drafts and temperature swings. A closet, a shelf in the garage, under the kitchen sink. It does not need light during this phase. Over the next 2 weeks, something incredible is happening inside that bucket. The mycelium is spreading outward from each grain of spawn, digesting the straw, building a network, and eventually turning the entire contents of the bucket white. When you see solid white mycelium visible at the holes, your bucket is fully colonized and ready for the next stage. Remove the surgical tape. Move your bucket to a spot that gets indirect light and decent humidity, not direct sunlight that will dry things out and stress the mycelium. A spot near a window that does not get blasted by the sun is perfect. In warmer months, the shade of a tree outdoors works beautifully. Now, you become a mister. 2 to 3 times a day, give your bucket a good spray with a simple water mister. Morning, evening, and midday if you remember. You are not soaking it, just keeping the air around those holes humid. Within a few days of removing the tape, you will see pinning, tiny nubs of mushroom tissue pushing through the holes. These are the embryonic fruiting bodies, and from this point, things move fast. Oyster mushrooms can double in size every 24 hours. That is not an exaggeration. You will go to bed looking at small bumps and wake up to clusters the size of your hand. It is genuinely one of the most exciting things you can watch happen in your own home. Harvest time comes when the caps are still slightly curled under at the edges. Do not wait until they flatten out completely, because at that point, they begin releasing spores, which will coat everything nearby in a fine white dust. To harvest, simply reach behind the cluster and twist it free from the hole. Different holes will be ready at different times, so harvest as each cluster matures and let the rest continue growing. Here is where it gets really interesting from a self-sufficiency perspective. After your first flush of mushrooms, keep misting. In a few weeks, you will likely get a second harvest from the same bucket, sometimes even a third. And when the bucket finally stops producing, you are not done. Break up that mycelium colonized straw into thirds and use each third as spawn for 3 new buckets. Layer it with fresh pasteurized straw the same way you did with the original grain spawn. Within 2 to 3 weeks, you will see new mycelium colonizing the fresh straw. 1 bucket becomes 3, 3 become 9, 9 become 27. This is exponential food production from a single initial investment of $3.30. Think about that for a moment. The industrial food system wants you to believe that feeding yourself requires massive infrastructure, chemical inputs, refrigerated supply chains, and weekly trips to the supermarket. But here you are, pulling fresh, protein-rich, nutrient-dense food from a bucket in your closet for less than the cost of a cup of coffee. And each harvest can be multiplied into the next generation of production without buying a single thing. The Amish never forgot this. They never needed a viral video to tell them that a 5-liter bucket and some straw could replace a trip to the meat counter. They have been living this way while the rest of the modern world was convinced that self-sufficiency was somehow outdated or impractical. It is not impractical. It is the most practical thing you will ever learn. If this is your first time here, we cover exactly this kind of forgotten, suppressed, and overlooked knowledge every week. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss what is coming next. And if you try this method, drop a comment below telling us about your first harvest. How many flushes did you get? Did you manage to multiply your buckets? This community is growing just like the mycelium itself, one connection at a time. I will see you in the next one.